Good evening. Big news, massive news, national media with Angelo Goutsios, with Stevan Bubalo, Mark Novak. National media is reporting the property market in the Northern Beaches, with some select suburbs we're going to go through tonight, has gone absolutely gangbusters. There's been a lot of focus on Manly doing extremely well, Queenscliff, Narrowena, Collaroy,
Alambie as well with the houses, definitely.
Killarney Heights.
Also, some even more media that's been coming out with stock shortage, talking about DY being half of where it was sitting compared to anywhere else in Australia, doing really, really well. Yeah. Guys, what do you reckon?
I think I like to see, there was a report that came out exactly talking about that, half the stock levels in DY. And to me personally, I always see DY as a barometer for the Northern Beaches. And when it's up and there's a lot of available real estate, then the whole Northern Beaches generally is carrying a lot. But when you start seeing a suburb such as DY with so much stock available, how many homes do we think we've got in DY? And to have such a low number.
Nine and a half, we're hitting about 9,500 for DY.
Dwellings.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there you go. So to see half the number of properties on the market today compared to 12 or 18 months back, I think that speaks volumes for what the entire Northern Beaches is seeing. And buyer demand, I don't know, I like to think also buyer demand's increased a lot through DY with the changes that have happened over the last 12 months here as well.
I think we've been slaughtered, like the proper, hey Belinda, hey Amal, how are you, Lisa? Good to see you. Good to see you, Lisa. Novak. It's been interesting because the property market's just had such a tough time. Like if you look at what the property market's been reporting, like ever since the market 2 years ago, probably that turnaround, we haven't really had any good news. So this is the first inkling of really good news with what's happening out there. With Northern Beaches, guys, I reckon there is something special that's going on there. We're probably one of the only suburbs out there that's, when you look at scalable across the whole of the Northern Beaches, and say there's 100,000 homes, there's actually not a lot of new properties coming on. Everyone's very DY centric about DY's got a lot of units going on.
Even DY doesn't have a lot.
No.
When you actually look at the overall, and you look at other suburbs in other parts of Sydney where they've got just towers being built up everywhere.
Yep.
I think we've only had 350. We've had about 500 units be delivered here in about 10 years.
Yeah, which is very, 'cause I looked at some data. I think there's something like 80 to 100,000 properties that get snapped into New South Wales on an annual basis. So if you're dropping in 80 to 100,000 properties into Sydney, for example, New South Wales, to have 400 or 500 or per annum, if that's 300 or 200, we're still nothing. So I think that's a big key to the Northern Beaches, that there's actually new land subdivisions or new units compared to most parts of Sydney. I think it's closer to zero than most parts of Sydney. I think that's a big secret to our capital growth.
Yeah, I had a look today, 46 properties on the market in DY.
Wow.
And 640 on the beaches. So you look at how the beaches were performing, I think even if you look at in the peak of the market, where you sort of say early 2017, we actually saw more numbers on the market or more properties on the market. So it's this time at the moment, and us as agents, we're out there speaking to other agents as well for in the industry as well, and saying how many are you seeing more and more properties coming on or anything. Normally by this stage, coming into spring, we would have, I reckon, noticed at least about a 25-30% increase.
We haven't seen that this year, have we?
Haven't seen it. This spring, so it's a
Why do you guys think that's the case? Like traditionally, this is when everyone talks real estate, experienced or not, everyone always says, spring, summer's the time it's going to happen, and it has happened to us in the past.
Yep.
But this year, it has kept back a little bit to what we expected. Do you guys what's your take on that? Why do you feel that might be the case this year?
Yep.
Rather than maybe the years past?
Look, I think it's easy to be optimistic in a property market when banks are easy with their money.
Yeah,
I think anyone who's got stars in their eyes, who's looking at upgrading their home or looking at buying an investment property, the first port of call is the bank. And I think that when they hit that port of call, the banks are super friendly to one property owners. So if people have got equity, they don't give a shit. If the people have got good cash flow, it's got to be bloody good cash flow if they own a second property. So you've really got to be a property owner, one property owner with good cash flow, with good equity to do a deal at the moment in this property market. There's not a lot of people like that, you know what I mean? So I reckon that's a secret to what's happening. And another thing as well, I reckon that's why the Beaches has done well, because everyone's very lowly geared. You know, we're not like, we've always had that reputation of being, you know, having a lot of equity in our properties and being probably a little bit more conservative. So I reckon lending's a big one. What do you guys reckon?
I think that as well, yeah, but it's just the main reason, and the properties that we're actually seeing coming on the market at the moment are people that need to do a move, whether it means downsizing or upsizing or relocating. So I think the investors at the moment, because they've seen a bit of a spike at the moment in the market, they're like, if I don't need to sell, I'm not going to. So it's, and that's, we're seeing, I guess, not enough properties out there. So, you know, we're not, even through our properties at the moment, I think we're seeing about 2-3 times the amount of people coming through a standard open house. So that's also, you know, spiked in regards to increase, you know, compared to having 10, 20 properties comparable to choose from, they now got 1 or 2. So you're going to get all this drive in one property.
Yeah, so it's a very interesting thing to understand. Whatever the concoction is, it's created like a big sort of a massive amount of interest in the Beaches nationally. So whatever the concoction of what we've actually created or whatever we've got, that's what's actually made it go super crazy. So, you know, are we seeing, when I say super crazy, I think it was a shit property market, and I think we're not as shit. So I don't think it's crazy as in we're doing 20 or 50% in capital growth in a year, which is what we used to. We're used to feeling crazy and capital growth, but I think it's the least of the bad property market.
Yep.
So, and I think that also means it's the turn coming into a good property market. So, when the all-time low, when do you reckon was for us?
Probably about 8 months ago, just before Christmas.
November,
in my
December.
opinion.
Well, look at it this way. There was a unit for sale in our building on the market with another agent for 4 months, and that owner approached me, and that was September, October, around September, August last year, put it on, and it was still on the market end of November. He came and approached us and said, look, can you help me rent the property out? It was on the market with another agent for sale. Look, can you help me rent the property out? So he put it on the market, signed him up for rental, and within 2-3 days he goes, you know what, I've just bought another place, I really want to get rid of it, I want to sell. And I said, look, let's time it up, let's put new photos, make it look like a different type of property, and put it on the market in the first week of January. All these new buyers came out of the woodworks, and it was gone within a week. Literally first open house. So I think in what I noticed is the first week, couple of weeks in January, there was just all these new buyers. So that was, I think any property that was on the market in November and December last year, that's when they sort of, I think that was the worst of it all. Anything from January onwards this year has generally been moving pretty quickly.
I know Amol's watching. I'd love to know what the western suburbs was like, Amol, when you saw it as the worst time in the property market. How are you, Tom Panos? Pressure's on now that you're watching. Yeah, I reckon if I had to punt, the January, February was icy. Maybe I'm looking at it, maybe I'm poisoned a little bit because I'm looking at settlements as well. But it certainly felt like when that election kicked in.
Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah.
When certainty started kicking in, when the silly when the banks were being investigated, the Royal Commission. When the Royal Commission was over, I think when we started snapping on certainty, then we started snapping on confidence. But even though the confidence is there, until APRA starts coming back a little bit, then I think we'll start seeing it rolling out. But yeah, definitely the Northern Beaches has been an absolute cracker. I think we've got a couple of comments here. Paul, how are you, legend? Nikki's joined. And Amol, elections made a huge difference. Yeah, absolutely. I think
I agree with that. The election, how many people we were talking to that were saying, look, I'm just going to wait, I'm going to wait to see. Even buyers, we were getting through literally the week of the election, the next week it was a different story from the same buyer.
Yep.
You saw him 10 days before, I don't know what I'm going to do, if it goes this way, I'm going to wait. and then literally 10 days it's a completely different person. So I agree with that. I think also on the northern beaches, we're a very tightly held community. A lot of baby boomers here, a lot of families grow up. Mum and dads tend to stay on the beaches.
You don't move out.
No, and I mean the property cycle, some people will say every 8 years. I think here on the beaches it's probably even longer when you look at a house.
Yep.
Like I look at where I'm up in, that Warriewood Motor Vale area, and people are there. It's quite common to have someone in their home 15 years. Like that's a pretty normal period. That's not considered a long or a short time frame. But I think the problem that we're seeing now is not only that there's a lower number of properties available, but I think a lot of these people would come out of those homes to downsize, but we just don't have a lot of opportunity now. And you're used to living in your home, you've made it how you want it over 17 years, and now you want to find a modern apartment that's new, that's still in your suburb. Where are you going to go, really? DY's been the only suburb to provide it. There's been little spots here and there, freshwater. I mean, as soon as a development hits freshwater, it's literally snapped up.
A lot of retirees like getting into fresh air.
Yeah, and everyone wants to stay local. I mean, we all love the beaches. We all grew up here. We live here. So I think there's a little bit more, as property comes on, you'll see the gears starting to turn, and obviously the different price brackets will start to perform. But I can't argue. I mean, I want to live here too for as long as I can.
Can you come say something, Glenn, about the property market?
Glenn.
Don't be shy, Glenn. Don't be shy. Glenn just walked in here. He's just walked past.
Glenn, you're made for TV, Glenn.
Yeah.
Radio.
Hey,
Made for radio.
hey, listen, when do you reckon the lower the property market was?
The bottom of the market was, I think probably October 18.
Yeah. Ange Amol reckons the same. December, she's saying October. I think everyone's fairly consistent. And what do you reckon about the property market going in media at the moment, being pumped up in northern beaches? What's it from?
It's really, really simple. It's constant demand, limited supply, low interest rates. People on the northern beaches aren't in sectors where there's unemployment. They don't work in sectors that's had no wage growth, so they're confident in going out and buying properties. We do have a bottleneck, but at the moment where people that are downsizing are still a little bit reluctant to jump in and buy something. There's not a lot of stock around.
Yep.
And that then stops people upsizing, getting a property. And this is what fueled those crazy times of 2017 where prices were going up 20% per annum.
Yep.
Because people's borrowing capacity is pretty good. What's the cash rate? 1.5?
Yep.
So it's 1.5, add a bit of, for the bank in there, add a bit of principal repayment, it's still pretty cheap. So people have the capacity to borrow maybe 100,000 more than if the cash rate was at 3.5.
Yep.
And they're doing that and securing property. I was down the beach on
every day.
Sunday, yeah, every day.
Every day.
But I was down on Sunday and someone said, my mate just sold a property in Roseville, 250,000 over reserve.
It's nuts.
So
So the auctions are getting some phenomenal prices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's also common.
And the off market,
80%, 85% clearance rate on the beaches.
the off market's going incredibly well too, where people are saying, it's not what I feel the property's worth, but it's my banking it's the money the bank will lend me.
Yep.
I'll just pay whatever they'll lend me. So if a property's worth 850,000, they're paying 920.
It's interesting.
And that 70,000, what's that? It's less than $100 a week in extra repayments.
So what are the levers? And my question is, what are the levers that are if that's where we've come from, if that's where we currently are, what are the levers in the market that are actually going to influence the change for capital growth? When are we going to see capital growth in the marketplace? If we're having that holistic look at this market, when do you reckon we're going to see capital growth coming into it? And what are the levers it's going to take to get that capital growth into the market?
Well, I think we're at end of 16 prices at the moment. So if you look
No way.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we're still back. We're back to where we were end of 16. So
if you've been paying a mortgage for 3 years and not living in the property, it's useless.
yeah.
That's shit.
No. I think there's another way to look at it. if you've had the property for 5 years,
Yep.
so you purchased in 2014, you had really, really, really good growth up to 2016.
Yep.
The growth that you had in 2017, which was it 30%? It was 20% in some areas. That's been wiped off, and you're back to the price of 2016.
Well, we had a. There's been a couple actually at the moment that I've noticed that have been on them or sold. They only bought it 2 years ago in 17, and they're actually, the owners are saying, look, if we get the same money, not more, but if we get the same money or close to, and we're giving it a go, and I've seen now 2 results that have been hit at that sort of end of. And they're sort of end of 17 prices as the market just slightly started to come off in a bit in quite a level. So it's
When's capital growth coming, and what are the levers that's it's going to take to get capital growth into the market?
Well, it depends what you thought with capital growth. If you're talking about to beat where we were as the peak of where the market has ever been, which is at, I think, May 2017. Are we saying to beat that, or are we saying to beat what it was end of last year? Because at the end of that, we've had growth since the end of last year.
Capital growth to say, okay, so over the next 12 months we've done 5%. Over the next 12 months we've done 10%. When are we going to start seeing
When are we
that?
going to start? I
And
think.
what's it going to take? What levers do you reckon it's going to take?
Well, one is, I mean, we're a very confidence-driven marketplace. We saw as soon as the media changed their tact, just the way they were portraying banks and lending, everyone, it seemed a little bit more relaxed and we had better buying. But clearly, it's going to come from the lending sector.
Yep.
And that's what triggered it last time. It was.
I reckon that's what's
Yeah.
what's actually nailed it into what's pushed it down.
That's
so
right.
it couldn't
It's
well
a change
likely
in
be
attitude
the same
and
lever
something
push
there.
it up.
And then I think at the same time, once we do get, certain price points moving, there's going to be desirability. I think right now, this is my own personal opinion, but I think the Northern Beaches is really lacking that home that sits between 1.2 to 1.4 million. And my personal belief is that is pretty much the key to our property cycle. Because once that bracket becomes available, you're going to see the buyers sitting underneath that are in the 2-3 bedroom apartments. They're going to be selling to come up. And the people that are in the 2s are going to be moving into that. The people from that 1-4s, they're going to be upgrading to the 1-8. So I think if we can unlock that sector in the Northern Beaches property market, you're going to see everything starting to turn. Again, it'll come down to the banks and how easily we can get finance to service these loans and what rates. I don't think rates are going to move too much.
You mentioned 1.2 though.
Okay.
Are we going to see that again? Like anytime soon?
no,
Because we've gone, there's been about 3 or 4 homes in DY or surrounding DY that have been guiding 1-1. And yes, that's where they were 6 months ago.
But how many?
But they're all selling for 1.4. And they're complete original homes. So that entry level market now, where you've got to look at it this way. In 17, an average house in Narrowena was guiding 145 for a 1970s, 60s original
What
3
year?
better.
What year?
In 17.
Right.
Was guiding 145 and was going for 200-300 grand above the guide and was hitting. There was nothing. Look at we had 4 Reed Avenue on the corner.
Yep.
And that was a house that they bought that house, original condition, 2010, for 685,000, and it sold exactly 7 years later in 2000 for 1.685, and that was a 3-bedroom original condition.
They made $1 million
in 7 years.
They purchased for 685, and they made $1 million. $1 million
7 years.
in 7 years.
So that was 1685. I don't think that 1.2 is around anymore. Like you look at, apart from a house that, okay, you might look at a house that might be on a very steep hill, but I'm talking about a typical flattish block of land, 600 square metres, 3-bedder house on it. That's what everyone wants. I don't know if they're going to...
What I really believe is we have little respites in the property market where prices don't go up. But because there's such a slow DA process in New South Wales to get things built, and there's also such a high land value, it's hard for developers to jump in. Now, other parts of Sydney there are oversupply. You need a 30% deposit to secure a unit. Parramatta would be a good example of that, where there's too many. Northern Beaches, that's not the case. Northern Beaches, they're looking by 2030 for the population, which is only 11 years away. Hopefully I'll still be alive then.
getting old.
Do you want a sound effect for that?
Yeah. What's that one?
That's we're going to do laughter.
Oh, okay.
Laughter. We're going to
But they said that the population will go up 30,000
Yep.
in that time. So if we average 3 people per new dwelling, like across the road here, we say there's going to be 3 people living in each dwelling that the developer builds. That's 10,000 properties.
Yep.
In 30 years on the northern beaches in DY,
That's a good point.
there hasn't been
That's
10,000 people, 10,000 properties built. Will
Yep.
there be 10,000 properties in 30 years built throughout the whole northern beaches?
So I reckon that's a good idea. If you punt on the northern beaches, on the lack of supply the northern beaches has, that's a good punt for capital growth in the future.
And another
That's a big one.
Yeah,
I reckon
another
that's a
few
big one.
things too is where the northern beaches had an objection from some people. Look, it's hard to get into the city in the morning.
Yep.
There's an improved link with the bus. There's also talk of a second harbour crossing. But all those things are sort of old thinking. What's really new thinking is just our relationship to work. We don't, people in white collar jobs don't go into the office, into the CBD every day. They work remotely, they work interstate, they work from their mobile phone, they work from their computer. So you might be working in the city as an accountant, but you've only got meetings 3 days a week.
Yeah.
2 days a week you're doing all your preparation from your home office. So you don't need that, 8 Ks from the city to be desirable anymore, because you're only going to the city 3 times a week.
Yep.
Once again, that will make the northern beaches more desirable. So
You're
I
saying
would
change in employment habits and
changing
work
just
habits.
our relationship to work
Yeah.
and how we work and what we do for work. That's all changed. I often talk about when my dad was a manager, leave the house at 5:30, get in early. Everyone had to walk past him on the way in and walk past on the way out. That wouldn't happen now. People don't even wear a suit to work anymore. They just wear their pajamas.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So
northern
punt on the
beaches.
northern beaches.
Punt on the northern beaches is going to do well. What do you reckon? And so the levers to the market doing better are going to be if the bank frees up, we're good.
Yep.
That's when we're going to start seeing property growth. The lack of stock that we do not offer on the northern beaches is going to be good for capital growth.
Yeah.
That could well be the secret to what we're experiencing at the moment, which is what we're seeing in media. In media, that which is what we're talking about tonight, is about the market going absolutely gangbusters in a couple of key suburbs, and I think that supply one's probably the big underbelly,
And I think also too, just the nature of Northern Beaches residents, not to go and try to buy in other areas where there's a lot of supply of property and cheaper prices.
Yep.
How many of our peers do you know that have left the Northern Beaches?
Well, that's right, and we generally don't lose people.
No.
We generally win people, so it puts a little bit of pressure. Like I never hear of people moving out west from the Northern Beaches for affordability. They generally won't. They won't pallet it. They won't do it. So they'll stay. They'll do what they have to do here to stay in that area. That's got to push pricing up as well, which is good. So guys, that's a good cover on that. Anything else we've been seeing this week? Some cracker sales.
Some big results, yeah. I think we've seen them for the last kind of 10 days. We've seen some phenomenal figures coming across. One thing we were just talking about, Angelo, is just the number of properties, kind of that sub $600,000 or sub $650,000 price point. Not a lot of those in the marketplace today.
So we almost were tipping sub 5
Yep.
a year ago or 9 months ago. We even got to prices where stuff was selling for 530, 540. But
It's tough to find sub 6, I think. I don't know if
Yeah.
one bedrooms are now all trading.
It happened in
6
November.
months.
That was something we saw in November and December. So when we sort of said when did we start to see the bottom of that part, it's I did property on the market in Lismore Avenue, and it was about 9 properties on the market, just in the street and surrounding streets around that sort of pocket of DY at that time, and it was amazing because when I put the property on the market, I could almost say there was nothing under 650. in a period of about 6 weeks. So one property would come down 30 grand because an owner was pretty motivated to let it go. Next minute, all the other agents had to follow to meet the market with that sort of. And then you started seeing properties in the 550 to 600 for 2-bedroom units in that area.
Yeah.
Now if you put anything on the market in that sort of spot, you're talking about, I reckon, at least 650 to 700 mark plus. So it's and those properties were in 17 probably 750, 800.
Guys, what a happy story. Because the last 2 years has been a little bit tough. So the last 6 months we've had just some great stories. The market going up, and the lever. We're clearly. I think we don't really have a lot of influence over the stock coming on the market. That seems to be a government thing, and we probably don't have a lot of influence on lending. That seems to be a government thing. So I think the levers are in the hands of our friends at government to what the market's going to be doing.
Yeah, well, the government's really addicted to stamp duty. Like that's one of the big taxes that affords everything in New South Wales.
Yep.
So they can't just sit by and watch this low turnover forever. So they will put in place things to get more turnover. 47 properties on the market in DY. That's less, and Ange has probably spoken about it, in the peak of the boom of 2017. That's, around this time.
So the amount of properties on the market at the moment are less than when the market was absolutely peaking.
There was about
That's a big
65
then, and if in December, it was 134 at a stage.
December 2018.
Just in DY,
Yeah.
just in DY alone, 137 properties on the market in the suburb.
Wow. Sorry, the camera was just jigging.
Yeah.
So
there's about a third.
if everyone understands the principles of supply and demand, demand is really constant. Great interest rates, steady employment, great place to live. Supply is very, very low. It's almost a name your price market in DY at the moment, within reason. Great time if you've got an investment property or you're sitting and thinking, look, I'm going to move out of the beaches. Great time to get on and sell.
So Amal's saying lending and loosening policy is going to be great. Lisa's having a little chuckle there.
What'd she
And Margaret's saying commercial growth is a good indicator too. Absolutely, particularly the economy. If our economy starts bumping along, then I think we're again, that's another great signal. So
Guys,
our economics.
Can I ask one thing? We've discussed a lot of different factors here that really affect Northern Beaches real estate, lending, stock levels, but we've all grown up here.
Yep.
We love living here. I'm just going to ask you guys, what's the best part about living on the beaches? Let's not talk real estate, but let's talk about what this place offers. Because that in itself is why people want to live here.
Yep.
What to me personally, 2 young kids growing up, good schools, clean environment,
Safe.
beach, safe. There's
community,
low crime community.
Yeah.
These are factors
There's good Greek
that we
population.
love. Good
There's a
Greeks,
very good Greek population, Serbian population.
Oh yeah.
Don't know about too much
You know
about
what I
Greece.
mean? What do you boys
Surfing.
love about this area? Because everyone loves it. This is why we love living here, and that's why
Safe.
we're buying real estate here.
Yeah, safe.
We want to be here.
I think it's safe, and I think one of the big things that's kept it safe has been the trains.
Yeah, I reckon that's big.
I reckon it is.
that's big.
I reckon it is.
Not having a
It's
train line. Boom.
not having a tram line. It's
Can we
but
do
yeah.
applause for that?
I think one of the things that's
No train line. No train line. Thank you.
I think one of the things that's kept it safe is it's been a pretty since the 70s. It's been a pretty middle class area.
Yeah.
Everyone wanting to do well for their kids, get them educated. I've lived in other areas of Sydney where people aren't as fortunate to be able to concentrate on that with their families. Just eking out a living makes it a little bit harder. So it's always been an area, great outdoors. We encourage our kids to go outdoors. Good schools.
Viva la beaches.
It's just God's country.
Well,
Allah or Buddha. I like Buddha because I look like him.
It's Allah's country, it's Buddha's. But that's a wrap, guys.
Yep.
So it'd be interesting to see this snapshot in the market in 12 months' time. But I reckon the way it's rumbling,
It's good.
yeah.
I'll be buying now. If you're buying, buy it now.
Buy now. See you
now.
guys. Have
See
a
ya.
good one. Cheers. Bye,
Thank
bye,
you.
bye.
Bye.